Today we're going to be looking at multiplying and dividing functions. So I know you don't have like a handout, but the front side of this note sheet, we're going to be looking at it with numbers. So like if we look at our problems, we have like s of 2 times f of -4, h of 2 times f of 1, f of 3 over s of 1. So I mean, all these problems we're plugging in numbers. So the big idea with questions like these with the numbers is, let's see if I can zoom in so I can actually fit it. But the big idea is you want to work these out separately. And then you want to multiply or divide. Or multiply, divide, whatever. So let's see what I mean by that. So like for example, this first problem, we have s of 2 times f of -4. So first thing you want to do is figure out what s of 2 is. So find the s function. So that's this last one here. So that would be 3 parentheses 2, and plug these into your calculator, plug them into the desmos.com/calculator. This would be 6. Feel like an advertiser, desmos.com/calculator. But f of -4, we're going to plug in. So find the f function, plug in -4. So 2 times -4 minus 3, if you work that out or plug it in, you should get -11. So now that we got our separate answers, we're going to multiply these together. So this would be -66. So that's what I mean by, like, in my big idea, work these out separately, then do your multiplication or your division. If you try and put this all in your calculator at once, I mean, you can do that, but I feel like that's a lot of times where we make mistakes when you try and do too much at the same time. If you chunk it in the smaller parts, usually you're less likely to make mistakes. So I'm gonna erase my work up here. And we're gonna start fresh. So looking at part B or question B. So we'll do this first part in green. So h of 2, find the h function. So that's this third one. Work this out, you would get 4. We're going to work out the next part separately. So f of 1, that would be 2 times 1 minus 3. Plug that in. That would be -1. So then we'll multiply these together. So 4 times -1 is -4. Let's look at one more, then maybe I'll have you try D. So for C, like I said, do your first part. So f of 3. So plug that in to the f function. 2 times 3 minus 3 would be 3. Then do the h part separately. So the h function is this function here. So -1 plus 2. That would be +1. So then multiply these two separate answers together. So that would just be 3. So I'm going to erase my work. Let's have you guys try D just to kind of make sure we're getting it set up. Maybe I'll do the first part. Keep doing it in green. So g of 2, that would be this g function. So 2 squared minus 1. If you plug that in, you should get +3. So how about you guys try figure out what g of -2 is. So you'll plug it into the same function, but -2. And then multiply together to see if you can get your final answer. So see if you can finish question D. Give that one a try. To finish this one, I'm gonna rate it above. So I'll do it in red. So g of -2, that would be -2 squared minus 1. If you plug that in, you should also get +3. If you didn't get +3, let's say you got -5, that means you didn't put parentheses. So if you didn't get +3, it could be your calculator if you're trying to use your phone. So like I said, don't be afraid to use desmos.com/calculator. So you'll multiply these two answers together and you will get 9 is your final answer. So that's multiplication of functions where you have numbers. And welcome, Chanel. Not too bad. Like I said, if you just keep this idea, work them out separately, then divide or multiply. And this is the same with addition and subtraction. But let's look at these division questions. We'll see the division ones are honestly, I mean, it's the same idea, work them out separately. So let me erase my previous work. So for example, f of 3 over s of 1, I'm going to work out the top. So f of 3 would be 2 times 3 minus 3, or 3. So that's going to go on top. And then I'm going to work out the bottom. So s of 1, well, that would be 3 times 1, or 3. So I would get 3 over 3. And the only thing you want to check is, can you simplify this or can you divide it? Like 3 divided by 3 is just 1. So if you can simplify it, usually you want to try to, but sometimes you'll get a decimal or you'll just leave it as a fraction. But so just kind of keep that in mind. All right, let's look at our last one on this side. So g of 5, plug that into the g function. So that would be 24. Because 5 squared minus, like if you plug that in, I know I might be going a little bit quick, but you can put those in your calculator. H of 4 would be 4 plus 2, or that would be 6. So then you just want to see, can you actually divide these numbers? Like, does it simplify? 24 divided by 6, if you put that in a calculator or just work that out, that should be 4. So that's it. So it's, I mean, these really aren't any different either, just because it's division. Sometimes you might be like, ooh, division, maybe it'll be harder. Nope, no difference really. Just press the division button instead of the multiplication button. All right. So this is evaluating with numbers. Let's flip. I mean, I know you don't have the sheet, but this would be like the second page or the back. Let's look at the same concept with variables. These are going to be a little bit trickier. It's going to pull some concepts back from Algebra 1 or Algebra 2. But let's just roll in. Some of these questions we're going to see we have to distribute, and some of them we use the box method or you can FOIL. So for this first problem, we have s of x times f of x. So s of x is 3x times f of x, which is 2x minus 3. You might have noticed I wrote 2x minus 3 in parentheses. Here's the idea. If you have an expression that has more than one part, you want to put parentheses around it. So if you remember some of your terminology from Algebra 1 or Algebra 2, like 3x is a monomial. It just has one term or one part. But 2x minus 3 is a binomial. It has two parts. So since it has, like, because it has 2x and it has the minus 3. So we want to put parentheses around it if you have more than one piece, if that makes sense. So in this case, we have a single thing times a binomial, so we can distribute. So we're just going to multiply these together. So 3 times 2 is 6. But when we multiply the variables, you have x times x. If you don't know, think about how many x's you have. You have an x and you have a second x, so you have 2 x's. Or you could also think of the exponents. That's x to the first, that's x to the first. You add the powers, so it would be x squared. But I think it's easier to think about if you just think, how many x's do you have? Well, we have 2. But so moving on, we're going to multiply this, this 3x times minus 3. That would be minus 9x. And that would be our answer. So if you see you're plugging in x's, you're going to get x's in your answer. So this is very different than the front side of this sheet. Let's look at our next one. So h of x, that's a binomial. So we have two parts. So I'm going to put parentheses around it. Times f of x, that's also a binomial, has two parts. So I'm going to put parentheses around it. We got to multiply these together. Depending on who you had or what classes you've been, you might have learned to FOIL, But the more common method that I think most of you guys have all seen at one point, it's called the box method. So you draw a box. It's going to have like four like sub boxes or four pieces. You put one of your expressions along the top. So I'll put x plus 2. Then you put the second one along the side. So 2x minus 3. And you want to put the minus by the number because remember, that's going to be like, we're going to treat that like a -3. So we multiply to get what goes inside our box. So 2x times x would be 2. And we have two x's, so it would be x squared. 2x times 2 would be 4x. -3 times x would be -3x. And then our last box, -3 times 2 would just be -6. So what's inside our box is our answer. We can just combine some like terms, but the 2x squared would just come to the outside. But we can combine our x's in this diagonal. So 4x minus 3x would be 1x. And then the -6 just comes out. So this would be my answer. So 2x squared plus 1x minus 6. All right, guess I'll have to zoom out a little bit. Next one, it's s of x, so 3x, that's just one part, so I'm not going to put parentheses around it, times g of x, so that's x squared minus 1. So this is a problem where you're going to distribute. So take a second, think about what this answer would be. See if you can do that distributive property. You guys did. So 3x times x squared, well, that's going to be 3. Think about how many x's you have. You have one x on the outside, you have 2 on the inside, so that would be x to the third power. And then 3x times minus 1 would just be minus 3x. Let's look at our last multiplication problem for today. So g of x, so that's a binomial. I'm going to put parentheses around it, times g of x, so the same thing. So this is where we're going to want to do the box method. So x squared minus 1, x minus 1. So our top left box, x squared times x squared would be x to the fourth. You have two x's and two x's, so that's 4 altogether. X squared times minus 1 would be minus 1x squared. -1 times x squared would be -1x squared. -1 times -1 would be +1. So our answer would be x to the fourth. We can combine our x squared, so minus 1x squared minus 1x squared would be minus 2x squared. And then the plus 1 comes out. And so these problems are definitely the most challenging out of the notes for today. So you might be looking at E and F and like, oh, it's division. You might be like, oh, these are going to be hard. But honestly, for division questions, you just put them on top of each other. So like, for example, E, f of x is 2x minus 3. S of x is 3x. That's our answer. F, g of x is x squared minus 1. H of x is x plus 2. There are some situations you can simplify, like fractions with like variable expressions, but usually it requires you to factor in. Honestly, unless the problems are kind of designed to work out nicely, it's very rare. Like if you just pick random variable expressions and put them on top of each other, it's usually pretty uncommon that you can really simplify them too much. So for the purpose of this class, we're just going to put them on top of each other. But honestly, these two questions, there's really nothing else you could do. But sometimes you might be able to factor or do certain things. But if you are doing that, I'm sure your future teachers will show you. But most of the time, you really can't do much. All right, so that is multiplication and division with functions. Like I said, on Wednesday, our asynchronous day, you will have a 3-question assignment over these. So try your best. Let me know if you need help.